It is no exaggeration to suggest that over the next few weeks, days really, the hinge point, the defining moment that will establish the trajectory of the United States of America over the next 4 years at least, that is, aside from Joe Biden being duly elected and thus sworn in next month as the 46th president, spare us the desperate, hysterical accusations of voter fraud that have not withstood scrutiny by a single court in the country, comes down to Georgia and its special runoff election for 2 U.S. senators. To put it plainly, the United States of America humanity needs Georgians, irrespective of their party affiliation, to elect Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock to the U.S. Senate. Not because Ossoff and Warnock are Democrats, we are way past meaningless party names, but because they're likely votes in the Senate in support of a Democratic president who recognizes he has one last shot at making a real difference in his lifetime for the American people, just might bend the arc of history in our country once again toward justice. Maybe. If they are up to the task, we simply do not yet know. There is, in fact, reason to be skeptical. But what we do know, we have 12 years' worth of data across the last 3 presidential terms alone to see with our own eyes, is that a Republican Senate majority guarantees this will not happen. The Republican Party, as it exists today, a Republican Party in name only, not necessarily the way you think of it, we'll get to that, is, not to put too fine a point on it, a metastasized cancer of the American body politic. But the Democratic leadership are not all that far behind. As hard as it may be for some of us to believe this is not a partisan issue, it just isn't. We'll go over why in a moment, but first, here are the key dates and things we, Georgians and everyone else, can do right now to wrestle back control of our future. 1, Georgians have just 3 more days, only until December 7th, to make sure they are registered to vote in those runoffs. Make sure you are. Fix it if you are not. 2, you can then cast your vote in person beginning December 14th. Do it as early as possible while lines are small. Don't wait. Visit Georgia's official website to find the polling hours and location nearest you. 3, if you plan on voting by mail, make sure your ballot is filled out correctly and precisely, and mail it in at least 3 weeks before Election Day, say by December 12th, to ensure it arrives in time and is counted. 4, Election Day is January 5th. Arrive as early as possible with good shoes, warm clothes, masks, snacks, water. Be sure to social distance and be prepared to wait. Be of good cheer because what you are doing is so important. Polls close at 7 p.m., but people around the country sometimes waited 7 hours or more to cast their votes back in November. Don't show up in person in vain. Once again, get there early. Visit Georgia's official website to find the polling hours and location nearest you. 5, and last, if you are not a Georgia resident and are not voting in the runoff, you can still have a big impact. Yes, we live in a pay-to-play system, and that has to change. But that change begins with electing Ossoff and Warnock, and for now, that means donating what you can to Stacey Abrams' fairfight.com. Ms. Abrams has been uniquely successful in getting out the vote in Georgia in particular, and that's what the entire country needs right now. So, why is this a critical issue? Why is this not a partisan issue? Because it is an existential issue, because it is a moral issue. Because given the current 50-48 edge the Republican Party enjoys in the Senate at the moment, the result of this election will determine whether or not Republicans retain their majority, which will in turn determine how far the country can pull itself back from the brink of self-destruction. You think maybe this is hyperbolic? Then consider the following, replacing the words Republican with Democrat and Democrat with Republican if you think it might help you see things more clearly. And at the end, ask yourself, am I okay with this? Because no matter the party, these behaviors are extraordinarily craven, cynical, and anti-American. They are everything the greatest generation fought against in World War II. It is not simply that the incumbent Senate candidates in Georgia, both Republicans, one running for re-election after just 1 term, the other running for the first time after being appointed to fill a vacancy, could not, their actual job performance now available for review, garner enough votes to defeat their Democratic challengers. That ought to tell you something. Nor is it that their fellow Republican Secretary of State improperly purged hundreds of thousands of registered, disproportionately Democratic voters from the rolls ahead of the general election and still couldn't get the Republican incumbents across the goal line, even though that's precisely what he did. It is not the breathtakingly cretinous series of eat their own circular firing squad moments in which Republicans across the country are, in the run-up to the Georgia special election, now attacking their fellow Republicans inside the state, accusing everyone from the aforementioned Secretary of State to the current governor and local election officials of the absolutely stupefying notion that these Republicans have rigged the election against other Republicans. Not even that. It is that every single sitting Republican U.S. senator and congressperson, by commission or omission, by outright support or conspicuous silence, has made a mockery of their oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and by doing so, has made clear their cowardice and laid bare any pretense to authentic moral leadership. To a person, they have aided and abetted a president so massively incompetent, corrupt, and dismissive of the very concept of the United States of America, of democracy itself, that in his latest ravings, among all of his other ravings, trashing science, military service, women, disabled people, immigrants, people of color, the press, the legitimacy of the 2020 election, and thus undermining Americans' confidence in the very basis of this country's reason for being, who has actually called for Georgia in writing to cancel its election because we won't need it. A president whose every action, every press conference, every tweet, every embrace of a foreign dictator at the expense of our allies, every hiring or appointment of another swamp creature to his administration has so weakened and besmirched not just the image but the substance of America that he has accelerated our country's demise into precisely the kind of financially, managerially, and morally bankrupt place with which he is already so familiar, his 6 bankruptcy filings in Atlantic City alone a testament to who he really is. Never mind the deaths of more than 270,000 Americans from COVID-19 in less than a year under his presidency, more, by the way, than in the last 5 wars this country has fought combined. Never mind the greatest rise in unemployment since the Great Depression. Never mind global climate change. Never mind how close we've come to war at least twice. Never mind the totally transparent self-dealing at the expense of everyone else. Never mind our own culpability in not seeing through it. The end result is a country purposely riven by utterly juvenile and extraordinarily misguided battles over labels like red and blue, conservative and progressive, left and right, socialist and capitalist, and yes, Republican and Democrat, because none of the label pairs handed to us, and which we lazily accept and proudly, stupidly wear on our sleeves, mean anything anymore, easily discerned if one only takes the time to read and study. Although that's not so easy when so many of us have to hold down 2 or 3 or 4 jobs just to get by, and still can't afford medical care, food, and housing all at the same time. The reality is that the very notion of what the Republican Party stands for, what the Democratic Party stands for, have been so badly mangled by bad actors on both sides that we, the American people from every walk of life, of every persuasion, have to turn down the volume, close our devices, and use our own common sense to decide what we stand for, what we're really seeing, and what we will accept. It was the Republican Party, the party of Abraham Lincoln, that fought to save the Union during the American Civil War. It was the Democratic Party that worked to destroy the Union, first by secession from the United States of America to create an alternate, separate Confederate States of America, and then, in the aftermath of the Confederacy's defeat, wrote and implemented the horrendous Jim Crow laws in the South, those procedural details that most voters don't pay attention to until it's too late, which entrenched racism and disenfranchised millions of Americans. Today, those two parties have switched places. It's Republicans who have become expert at manipulating the law to undermine American values and aspirations, Democrats trying to save the Union, Yet with a spectacularly cruel joke thrown in, neither party, Republican nor Democrat, truly represents the vast majority of the American people, beholden instead to the lobbyists and campaign contributors who are the only ones between them and unemployment. So, common sense. Maybe Mark Twain said the thing about common sense is that it just ain't common. Maybe it's an apocryphal tale. There is some dispute over who actually said what. But Georgians have a unique opportunity to display the common sense too many of us seem to lack these days. Not by placing their blind faith in Ossoff and Warnock, but by saying in voting for them, we're smarter than either party leadership gives us credit for. Democratic leadership, we will hold your feet to the fire once you are in the White House and have the backing of Congress. You have to show us, concretely, in timely fashion, how your vision for America actually works for the average working American and American families rather than large corporations. How that vision redresses the wrongs, the disparities, saves us from an untenable future. But if you give us the same tired bromides and performance of too many of the Clinton years, too many of the Obama years, if you spend your time telling us what can't be done, what's infeasible, all the while wrapping gifts to corporations in a blanket of tokenism you hope the people of this country won't notice, you're of no use to us. Republican leadership, you need to come up with something better than Democrats are socialists and radical leftists who will destroy the United States of America, or Democrats will deficit spend the country into financial oblivion, because you're already managing to do that quite on your own, however you want us to think of you. We've outgrown your tired refrains, your gerrymandering, your voter suppression wrapped in your Orwellian language of voter protection, your racist Southern strategy dog whistles, your hackneyed promises of law and order, when we can see with our own eyes that you foment civil unrest and care nothing for our Constitution or what makes America truly great. Like that lawyer of yours who demanded this week that the Georgia Secretary of State be drawn and quartered, taken out at dawn and shot. Or the request to the Supreme Court this week by one of your weaker-minded state-level colleagues to throw out millions of already certified votes of Pennsylvanians the same day the U.S. Attorney General said the Department of Justice had found no evidence of systematic voter fraud anywhere in the country. The currently constituted Republican Party needs to do a lot better than that, because otherwise you are less than useless. Beyond destroying the legacy of a once great party, you are an existential threat to decency and to the Republic. So, Georgia, all eyes are on you. Your vote just might be the next domino in a chain of events which saves the Union once again, and in the process, helps save the world. Good luck to all of us, and thank you.